So this chapter starts with a flashback of Tengen revealing that Hikari is currently making money as a bookie for an underground fight club at an abandoned parking garage. So this is interesting because we knew some information about Hikari coming into this through the Jujutsu Kaisen fan book. And I'm going to keep coming back to this throughout the video because there's like 3 things coming to fruition in this chapter. And one of them was when Gege revealed that his full name was Hakari Kinji and that he was a gambler. But it turns out that not just any gambler, but he's like, you know, running this gambling fight club syndicate. But on top of that, the fight club is hand-to-hand combat between sorcerers, and the spectators are mostly non-sorcerers. Then Megumi says, like, doesn't that clearly violate Article 8 of the Jujutsu regulations regarding secrecy? And later on, we find out the way they get around this is that they don't allow the competitors to use curse techniques because the spectators who are non-sorcerers wouldn't be able to see it, and that this fight club prioritizes entertainment over all else. So then we see Yuji and Megumi approaching the parking garage, but before they enter, they change their school uniforms because they don't want Hikari to know that they're coming from Jujutsu High. According to Megumi, Hikari clashed with the authorities and got suspended from school. Going back to the fan book, we found this out there too. When Gege said that Hikari was transferred to Kyoto during the Night of 100 Demons parade, he also got into a disagreement with the higher-ups and he beat them up and then he got suspended. So I think that right there is establishing Hikari as like an anti-hero. But considering that he's suspended and also doing this seriously illegal activity, if he sees someone from Jujutsu High there, he's going to assume it's not for good reason. Then they meet the bouncer at the door and he's like, first rule of Fight Club is don't talk about Fight Club. Who told you about this place? And then Megumi's like, I didn't get his name before I killed him. And then it says in parentheses, lying. Like, we know he's lying. Gege, you didn't have to write that. But I'm sure maybe it was like one of his editors who suggested that he includes that there. But after this, he successfully bluffs his way into getting into the tournament because he claims the guy that he took out disappeared a month ago, and coincidentally, there was a guy that disappeared a month ago. So then we see the other bouncer on his phone talking to the boss, who is pretty much Hikari at this point, and Hikari allows them to join the tournament. However, Yuji is the only one that's allowed to fight. For some reason, Hikari doesn't want Megumi to fight. At this point, it's also revealed that Hikari has been viewing them through like a security camera. So they agree to his terms, and Megumi says to Yuji that you go in there and you look around there fighting on the inside, and I'll sneak into the parking garage. He doesn't want them to know that he's sneaking around because he's not trying to preemptively ruin his relationship with them because they're trying to recruit Hikari here. And that force is only a last resort, which, since it's being said, I'm assuming they are eventually going to have to use force here, meaning that we might see one or, you know, both of them fight Hikari. I think that would be pretty cool. But he also reveals that he doesn't want to waste any time because of his sister Sumiki. He wants to get all of this done before it's her time to declare participation in the Culling Game, which apparently from this point is 9 days. So then Yuji's getting ready to fight in the tournament, and he's talking to the bouncer, and he reveals what I was talking about earlier about how they can't use curse techniques, but he also says, like, you can't run away, you gotta fight where the spectators can see. Then he reveals that there's 2 types of games. Unscripted matches, like the one that Yuji's about to fight in, but then there's also scripted matches, and the boss Hakari fixes those. That's super interesting, and I think that's giving us insight into Hikari's possible curse technique, but we'll talk more about that later. So Yuji shows up to the tournament, and it turns out that his opponent is Panda. Yes, Panda is randomly showing up in this chapter. But after this, we're getting introduced to Hikari for the first time, and we see him like looking at these monitors. And I gotta say, Hikari looks much different than what I expected. I wouldn't be surprised if most of us expected him to look differently given the glimpses that we got of him in the manga, especially the way that the anime made him out to be. And I'm not mad at it or anything. I think his design is fine. It looks pretty cool actually, and I think fitting for his what I think to be potential, you know, anti-hero character. But it also turns out that he has a girlfriend with him, and she's also a 3rd year from Jujutsu High, and her name is Kirara Hoshi. And again, going back to the fan book, because we knew that this was a possibility coming into too, because Gege was asked, is there only one third-year student? And Gege said, at the moment, I'm thinking about 2 students, but maybe it will change. But apparently it didn't. And the other third-year student turns out to be Kirara. Now, also, her name means like pretty star or beautiful star or something like that. And if you look at her pupils, they're kind of like stars. So maybe that's some insight into what her curse technique could be possibly. And she's probably pretty powerful too, because when Panda is talking to Yuji, he says the other third-year sorcerer, referring to Kirara, is also a problem. So yeah. But going back to their introduction, Hakari says luck is nothing if you don't test it. It's boring knowing who's going to win, referring to Yuji versus Panda. No stray sorcerer is tough enough to beat Panda, referring to Yuji because he doesn't know who he is, so he's assuming that he's like a random, and he's also establishing that he knows who Panda is here since he's a second year. And I think this is the second instance of us maybe getting a clue as to what his curse technique could be. But we're going to get one more, and I'll go more into it after that. So then we come to Yuji and Panda fighting, and they're like secretly talking to each other. And Yuji's like, have you met Hakari? And Panda's like, he's suspicious of me because he knows who I am, so he's avoiding me. And then he asks Yuji if he's hiding that he's a high school student, and he says, yeah, and he's like, okay, so you know what to do then. Then he throws the fight for Yuji to win so that he can gain the interest of Hakari and therefore meet him. So then we're coming to the end of the chapter with Hakari talking to one of his guys on his phone, and he says he fights in 3 dimensions, referring to Yuji, to dazzle the spectators up top. I can write a good script with him, and like I'm always saying, I want to do it while the iron's hot. So I think that's the third clue, or maybe even 4th clue as to what could be going on with his curse technique. And I say 4th because of the iron's hot line. If someone can maybe correlate to what that could be in the comments, let me know. I'm more focused on the other stuff. But going back to what the bouncer said about how Hakari rigs the scripted fights, and also what Hakari later said about luck is nothing if you don't test it, it's boring knowing who's going to win. Meaning that allegedly he didn't want to bother using his ability on Panda because it was a sure victory, which maybe is implying that he was going to use his ability to favor Panda if his opponent was possibly stronger than him. And then lastly here, I can write a good script with him. So this is all kind of leading towards one direction. So believe it or not, we actually had even more information on Hakari coming into this. And this is coming from an interview that Gege had on Fuji TV, where he said that he would like to introduce Hakari to the series, but the way that his curse technique works might not align with things and cause some outrage. And he also mentions that his powers has something to do with his name. Now his name loosely translates to scales or having something to do with balance. And given what he was talking about in this chapter, maybe his curse technique has something to do with like fights and giving them favorable outcomes maybe. Like in order for his curse technique to activate, he needs to witness a fight or something. And then he can decide who the favorite in the fight is, so therefore they become stronger or just more likely to win, which is, I guess, a subtle way of reality warping maybe. And speaking of that, maybe we take the line where he says, I can write a good script more into consideration. Maybe he could just straight up alter reality or create a sequence that plays out. That would be a little too overpowered. So I'm more inclined to think that it has something to do with altering the probability of somebody winning a fight. Like him, and of course him included. Like if he were to fight somebody, he could have the odds favor him. I mean, it was like instantly established that Hakari was basically in the same tier of Akotsu when they were first mentioned. And Akotsu himself said that when Hakari gets serious, he's stronger than him. But Maki denied that, so it's like, who knows? But he's probably a beast for sure. But after this, we see Megumi like eavesdropping on the guy that Hakari is talking to by using like a shadow to hide himself. But then we come to the final page and Hakari says, I haven't been this on edge since the days of my old girlfriend maxed out credit card. So Gege has had like this habit of ending his chapters with characters saying just, you know, standard dialogue, but it having like a double or even triple meaning. And I think that might be the case here, meaning that the girlfriend that he's referring to might be a character that we already know about, that the maxed out credit cards is a hint to that, which means that his girlfriend could possibly have been Mei because like she was all about money. Like she considers herself to always be on the side of money and doesn't get out of bed for free. Allegiances and politics don't matter to her as long as she gets paid for being a sorcerer. She also claims to not understand relationships not based on money. So maybe, but also how old is Mei? I think she might be in her 40s because when Gojo was a second year, she was like his senpai. So maybe she's in her mid 30s possibly. But Hakari on the other hand is like 17, right? So maybe problematic. I mean, she did have that pretty sus sequence with her younger brother, so That's pretty much it for the video today, guys. Let me know what you think about this chapter in the comments. And if you liked it, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.